Passengers on the Moscow metro can now pay for their commute using facial recognition technology. The system is called FacePay and connects passengers' biometric data to their credit cards. It's been rolled out across all 241 stations in the Russian capital, but private activists are sounding the alarm.
All he needs is his face. To ride the Moscow metro, Vladimir Belyakov has to pause in front of the facial recognition cameras set up at the ticket turnstiles. Then he can get on his way. Belyakov is one of around 15,000 people who've been volunteering to test the Moscow metro's so-called FacePay system, which has now been opened to the wider public.
Usually you have to get out the right card, or you have to find your Metro Pass or your credit card in your backpack or your pocket. Here you don't have to find anything. You don't even have to take off your mask. You just walk up, pass through, and that's it.
Test passengers had to provide a mobile phone number, credit card details, and a photo to register for FacePay. The Moscow metro assures users of the facial recognition system that their personal and biometric data won't be passed on to third parties.
The data is stored in a protected system here, and people's bank details are stored on the side of the banks themselves, so they are completely safe as well.
Moscow's Department of Transport says FacePay allows passengers to pay for their ride 3 times faster than usual. The system is now in place on all 14 Moscow metro lines, and there are plans to introduce it on other public transportation like buses and streetcars as well. Above ground, Moscow already has over 200,000 facial recognition cameras. After opposition protests earlier this year, police used footage from the surveillance camera network to arrest several demonstrators. Privacy campaigners warn that the authorities are expanding facial recognition networks to gain more political control.
The danger is, they say, the 220,000 facial recognition cameras are for our safety, but actually they're collecting data. Even the Moscow mayor confirms from that database it is clear who you spend time with and for how long. Your social circles will be identified. That information can definitely be used for political purposes and against Kremlin critics.
In Moscow, the reactions to the idea of the facial recognition system on the subway are mixed.
We're losing control while it's becoming easier for the government to control us.
It's logical to have this system because there is the danger of terrorist attacks. So I am in favor of it. I am conservative, I guess. I don't want to sign up to FacePay. It's scary.
FacePay test passenger Vladimir Belyakov plans to keep using the system now that it's being rolled out, and he's not too concerned about privacy issues.
There's cameras everywhere already, so I don't think it's a big deal. It doesn't scare me.
Moscow's transport authority has promised that for now, traditional payment methods for the city's metro system will remain in use. But they say there may soon be a discount for anyone who opts to pay using their biometric data.
I'm joined now by Nasser Damer, a cybersecurity expert from the Fraunhofer Institute. Thank you for taking the time to speak to DW. Now, as we saw in that report, mixed reaction from people. Technology prompts unique questions, mostly about privacy concerns. Now, many rights groups have voiced their concern, particularly with this facial recognition and what that could mean in terms of disadvantages for people. What's the most pressing concern that you have?
So there are 2 main issues regarding the privacy in this matter, is to use this system in an unconsent and out of regulation reasons. And the second part is that the data, the biometric data, the facial images are stored in link with identity, the name, for example, and this link can be breached even though it's secured. And this happened before, for example, in such data that is used in the banking system in the UK.
Okay, so potentially that they could be stored and it could be breached, and people that are not meant to see that information could potentially see it. Now, Russian civil rights groups have said that the rights and responsibilities associated with facial recognition is not defined by law, not in Russia and not in other places like Europe. Are countries doing enough to develop and set a legal framework, a clear one?
Yes and no. It varies a lot between different countries. For example, in Europe, there is quite a clear regulation. It's part of the General Data Protection Regulation, specifically the Article 9, where the processing of biometric data for the purpose of unique identification of a person is prohibited. However, this prohibition does not apply in certain cases. For example, when the person gives their consent for the data to be used for a certain purpose, and for reasons of substantial public interest, for example, or for the establishment, exercise, or defense of legal claims. Other countries also have a similar regulation. For example, the Japanese Act for Protection of Personal Information, and different states in the US have their own regulations, and they are mostly related to the consent of the user to use this data.
Now, there's varying rules and regulations, perhaps not fully in place in various kinds of countries, but of course, this issue crosses borders. Do you see a need for a global legal framework, and do you think that's even realistic?
That will be quite difficult, because you will need to have a jurisdiction over all the countries, and this is not the case. There are general global regulations that are related to the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights that defines, for example, privacy as fundamental rights, but there is nothing that is cross-border, that can be seen as a cross-border regulation.
Cybersecurity expert Nasser Damer, thank you for your time and expertise.
Thanks very much.